In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are. And I don't think I would be me without you being you. Your direction, expression, intention has taken us far.
Welcome, everybody, to Beethewellness Podcast, episode number 22. Coming at you from random places in the state of California via Skype.
Well, you're in a random place.
I'm in a random place. Yeah, that's right. You're in a pretty normal place. I am in the middle of the middle. California is on fire right now, and I'm staging with some folks. Hopefully, going to go get to do something soon.
Yeah, it's getting real for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we got a couple weeks of shenanigans that are going to go on here, and I don't know, maybe through September, but it's kind of hard to say. But it's burning.
Well, I saw something that they just declared a state of emergency. Is that correct?
Yeah, but not to downplay it, but that's like predominantly a funding thing, you know? Like when you declare a state of emergency, then it starts the ball rolling to get federal help for paying for disasters and whatnot, you know?
Got it. Because I know that's one of the...
Yeah, it is an emergency. You know,
yeah,
we've got a lot of stuff going on and a lot of people out of their homes and evacuated and all that, but, you know.
Yeah, well, I know that the one reason that you can be held on duty, even if you have pre-approved vacation, is because there's been a state of emergency declared. And I got really nervous because I would hate to go to Burning Man without you.
I know. Yeah, and that's true. That is one of those things. That's like when they do that, that sets you up to have all of your civil liberties taken away.
Yeah. I might have to kidnap you. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. We're working on it.
All right, so I've got an inspirational quote.
Okay.
Inspiration is the responsibility to create.
That's pretty good.
That is good, right? It's on my kombucha bottle.
No, it's not.
I think it's good. It's by Jacob Scanlon, who's a musician out of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Who even knew?
But I agree. Inspiration is the responsibility to create.
Yeah. I'll buy that. I mean,
I like it.
That's cool.
Yeah, okay, so I guess we should dive into some proper subject matter, shall we?
Yep.
Okay, so you want to start us out?
Sure. So one of the topic of today is kind of this balance of long-term success, right? So how long do you try to do something before you decide that it isn't working and try to do something else? Right. And so to kind of start it off, I think we need to talk a little bit about goals, because the goals are really, you know, like your long-term goals or benchmarks on your way towards your goals are sort of the only measure that we have as to whether or not what you're doing is working. So, you know, if you're putting yourself in this position where you're saying, I've been doing this for 6 months and it's not working, well, by what metric, right?
Right. And this happens all the time. Adam and I see this all the time where I've been paleo for 6 months or a year and it's not working. And that's why, you know, we talk about the personal consults a lot, because what is your version of I've been doing this for 6 months? Is it that you've gone completely carb free, but you eat 2 pounds of almonds a day, or, you know, a can of almond butter? What's the real version of I've been doing this for 6 months to a year? And I know obviously that's an extreme version, but you'd be amazed at the tweaks that you need to make in order to come into the real version of I've been doing this for 6 months. And because there's so much information out there on how to do it properly, how to be paleo, how to be primal, your personal what is the word?
Complex equation.
Your complex equation. Yes. I'm like your personal quotient.
Paleo code.
Sometimes words are not my thing. So anyway, sometimes your personal complex equation is just that. It's very complex. So we've got to figure out like what you're doing and how to tweak it to meet your goals and needs.
Yeah, totally. And then it's the tracking, right? So like so those are the two questions. I've been doing this. So what is this? Like in reality, what is that? And it's not working. Like, what is working? You know what I mean? What is your goal, or what is your definition of working? And so from our experience, it kind of, you can break that down. The goal component, we've sort of been able to break down into 3 different categories. One being health, which is like biomarkers of health and disease, right? Your blood lipids, blood sugar, stuff like that. Whether or not you're able to get off meds that you may be on, medications and stuff. And so really in that sort of health picture, right?
Right.
Which is a very important one to track, because ultimately, and we'll talk about this kind of as we go through here, but ultimately this needs to be the goal. We need to be healthy first, and then we can work on these other things, right?
Right. So, and sadly, often the first thing people track is fat loss. And unfortunately, you may be frustrated by watching fat loss first, because it actually takes you becoming healthier, coming into a healthier homeostasis for the fat loss to then occur.
Right.
So, but go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Next. Okay. So next goal is fat loss. Yeah. So that's the other one that's most common for people, right? And some folks still say weight loss, but we're trying our hardest to steer them towards fat loss as a word, unless they're like jockeys or something, you know what I mean, where they actually do need to weigh as little as possible, regardless of body composition. So
right.
Yeah. So health, fat loss, and then the next, of course, is performance, like bigger, stronger, faster, more pull-ups, 2,000-pound back squat, whatever those things are, those performance-related goals.
Right.
And they actually don't even need to be that significant. It can be, I want to be able to bend down and pick up my grandchild, without breaking something or tweaking my back. I mean, that's a performance goal.
Right. And certainly most everyone has a combination of goals that would obviously cover these 3 topics, but usually there's something out in the front. And in my experience, it's usually fat loss. Typically, that's the one that you see people say, I want to lose fat.
Yeah. And we actually had a thread going on in the feed the other day about this, and sort of the, body image issues, and how when you say body image issues, we normally think that there's some negative connotation to that, right? Like the orthorexia kind of thing, right? Where you're, so super concerned by it. And it really does come down to a balance, because some of us were discussing in the feed, that's like the body image is a huge motivator for me, like I want to be lean and look fit and all of those things. I mean, my health is definitely the number one priority, but, having a positive image of myself is something that's really important to me, So it just comes back to that balance, So there's nothing wrong with fat loss being your goal, No,
not at all. And in fact, usually making fat loss a goal helps you to achieve the other 2 goals as a byproduct. So totally. There's nothing wrong with that. And most of us have a little bit of ego going, hey, I want to look good and, I want to feel good about myself. And that's all good. Those are natural human things to want.
Yeah. And they're good, right? So low carb paleo coupled with resistance training it's a really good place to start for this stuff, right? And for some people, it's really all they need to see the improvements that they're looking for. It's like across the board, right? In all 3 categories. So their health improves, they see fat loss, and they see performance gains. And that's super cool for those people. Like that's awesome. And we kind of wish that everybody was in that boat, because then this would be a lot easier, the whole thing.
Yeah, and this whole movement is actually built on that person. Because so many people have seen that person in the paleo world who've gone paleo and they strength train, and it just seems like everything just falls into place. And the rest of us are chasing that person's dream.
Yeah, that's actually it's a really good way to look at it. I think,
it is.
Because it is that person's experience. And if there's one thing that we've learned about the human body, is that as similar as it all is, it's very, very different. Everybody's unique, complex equation is just different.
Right. And I would just like to mention, the people that end up writing books or having blogs or, preaching how wonderful this experience has been for them are those people, are the people that have seen these amazing results, and all they had to do was go paleo, eat super low carb, and, you know, some strength training, whatever. So I just want to say that those people are usually the loudest voices in the community, but there's also a whole lot of other people that have not had that same experience. Right. And so it's important for us to bring light to that, because we actually are those people. We're the people who have seen really good results to a certain degree and then went, there's something that's just not quite right. And we've got to dig deeper and figure out how to make this more approachable for larger groups of people.
Totally.
Yes.
Yep. Very, very well said. So the folks who are still struggling, or it's just not magic for, we can kind of break those down into 3 categories as well. It's the day of 3 categories. Keeps everybody in tune. Right? So there's people who it's never worked for. Right. I went paleo and I've been doing it for a while and I've seen 0 change. And that is pretty uncommon in our experience. And usually what it comes down to is that you're probably not tracking the appropriate things. I mean, if you're somewhat unhealthy, or if you've been eating a standard American diet and you make these changes and nothing happens, there's something going on there. You know, like right. Maybe you're not tracking the appropriate blood markers, or you haven't given it enough time, or you're not being honest with yourself, something like that about what it is that you're doing, or you're already lean, fit, and healthy. Right. This is something that we see. I see it actually quite a bit in my job. Guys who are in pretty dang good shape. They eat, whatever's going on in men's health this month, and they do their workouts, and they're, for whatever reason, genetics or just extra hard work, whatever, they're relatively lean and they feel good and all of this stuff. And then they're like, yeah, I went paleo and man, I didn't feel any better. In fact, I was super tired for my workouts. And you're like, right. Okay. Yes. This is a different story. This is not really who we're talking about.
Right. Or, the changes, and like Adam's saying, this kind of relates to not tracking it appropriately. The changes are so subtle, meaning, okay, my stomach wasn't as gassy, or didn't have a stomach issue, or maybe I recovered a little quicker from something that I would have been sore. Like the things that did change were so subtle, you just didn't even notice them because you weren't paying attention to them.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yes, for sure. And I know this happens with my mom. She just said this the other day. She's like, I would have never noticed this before, but like she one day just felt like eating a bagel. So she's like, screw it, I'm eating a bagel. I guess she was at a place that made them fresh and she ate a bagel. And the next day she noticed that she had some aching in her fingers, some kind of arthritis stuff going on. And she said, I probably would have never noticed that before had I have not had the savvy to do so, to realize, I had this thing that probably just gave me a tiny bit of inflammation. And then I felt that my fingers were a little achy the next day, where most people wouldn't correlate. I'm a little stiff, or, things feel a little wonky today. They wouldn't have correlated that with the plate of pasta or whatever they had the night before. Totally. So once again, it's just that those things you don't notice, you don't think to notice those different things. Like if you're achy, if your eyes are puffy, just little things that you're like, these are signs of inflammation that I would have never noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's just so much going on. And that's why tracking, we talk about tracking so much, but the reality is that tracking biomarkers and stuff like that it's really important. Especially if you're just trying to fine tune it. If you're saying, you know what, I'm just going to set it and forget it and trust that eating this way is making me healthier and that's it, then that's cool. But if you're fine tuning and tweaking and if you're getting stressed out, or worried or discouraged by some lack of progress, then you should really look at what you're tracking.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the next category of people are those who saw progress initially and then stalled. And this is super, super common, right? But I think if people were tracking biomarkers, they would actually fall into the third category. So we'll just jump right into that one. And the third category is those who continue to progress in one or two out of the three, right? So their performance continues to improve, or their health improves, or their fat loss improves, but not everything else, right?
Right. And you're right. This is what we see the most.
This is what we see the most, yeah. And this is why the tracking becomes super important, is because now you can look at it and say, okay, well, I'm still getting healthier and my performance is still going up, but my fat loss has stalled. And that is by far the most common of all of the problems, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Like, my blood markers look great, my hormones look great,
I'm
super strong, I feel great, but I'm still fat. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or I'm not as lean as I want to be, or this hasn't budged, or whatever, right?
Right.
And so that can be all sorts of stuff, right? That are sort of stalling that progress. I mean, gut health, body fat set point. If you buy that, I mean, some people, I think it's worth talking about. I mean, there's just this idea that, once you've been a certain body composition for a period of time, your body's like comfortable there. And some people call that the set point, and you have to work extra hard to change it and then maintain some other, whatever your new body fat percentage is for a period of time before that becomes your set point.
I totally believe in this. And obviously you can argue it from both sides, but just from my own experience and from working with so many women over the years, I completely agree with this. And I think that women especially have a happy, healthy homeostasis that is usually a little bit more body fat than we want. And it is so hard to get rid of that last little fluff. I mean, your body is just not... It really likes it, and it's healthy, it's stronger. It's like, hey, whenever you tax me with these crazy workouts or, even just life stress, I'm able to deal with it. This is a good place for me to reside and know that I'm going to survive anything you throw at me.
Totally. And and you're right. And often it's just not the
cover
look
of Shape magazine.
Yeah, totally. Or just the look that people want, or how they perceive themselves, right?
Yep.
So, set point's a big one. I mean, there's issues with leptin signaling and insulin resistance and stress. I mean, and that's where this stuff just really starts to get super complicated, or I shouldn't say complicated, but there's just a lot more factors to take into account when you run into one of these stalls,
Yeah, absolutely.
So what to do about it, right, is kind of the question. And I think that we just sort of need to remember that our body is just reacting to what we do. So it's just reacting to all the inputs. And once it adapts to a stimulus, then you need to change something in order to keep adapting, right? So just like when we're talking about strength and conditioning stuff, so if you do 5 sets of 5 back squat at 150 pounds forever, it's eventually you're going to stop getting stronger from doing that, right? You need to change something. And so the same kind of thing happens when we're talking about diet. When you first go paleo and you clean up your food and your body's starting to heal, your gut's healing, your inflammation's going down, all of those kind of things are happening, and your body's like, whew, man, all right, I'm healthy. But now maybe it's time to look beyond just the quality of the food. Now the change in quality has stopped your fat loss, or you've stopped losing fat based purely on quality, and now it's time to look at something else, right?
Right.
And so, like, sticking with sort of the adaptation model, fat loss and performance are just positive adaptations to changes in your environment. So when you work out and when you eat correctly for you, then you lose body fat and you perform better. And that's just the direction that your body's going. But they're just adaptations, and we view them as positive, right?
Right.
So if you stop adapting, then it's time to look at what's next, right? And usually what that comes down to is you need to change your stimulus, right? And that's what we were just kind of talking about with maybe changing the way that you're eating or changing your strength and conditioning plan, or both. But what may be even more important is to remove or mitigate the things that are blocking adaptation, right?
Right.
So this is like, why is your body prioritizing something over the workout and nutrition stuff that you're doing? The stimulus that you're trying to get your body to adapt in the way you want it, it's ignoring because there's other things going on, right? And And so chronic stress is probably one of the biggest to talk about here. And chronic stress is a pretty like kind of nebulous, broad term, but that's really what it is, right? So if you're, and it's going to block these positive adaptations that you're looking for. So when you're consistently in this fight or flight mode with, low heart rate variability, this like obvious sympathetic nervous system drive, your body prioritizes all of its resources towards maintaining that stress response, because that's the way that we're engineered, right? You don't want your body, when you're, traipsing through the Serengeti and with a lion on your tail, you don't want your body to shut down and start digesting food. Like, sorry, can't run from the lion. We've got some digesting to do,
Right.
So, and I mean, in digestion, as we know, like gut health and getting nutrients and all that kind of stuff is huge. And it's one of the first things to go when your stress response turns off.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, turns on.
Turns on, right. And one of the things I want to mention really quickly is the time frame in which we're talking about here, because a lot of folks are like, okay, well, I went paleo and working out. Yeah, I was stressed out, but I did a month's worth of the meditation challenge. So I've done the stress thing, like the stress thing should be over. And the one thing I want to mention is that it takes a long time for the ship to turn. Just because you've been doing something for a month or 2 or 6 months, you have to think about how long your body has been under this chronic stress response and how long it takes for all of your systems to sort of reacquaint themselves in the new direction.
Totally.
And furthermore, your version of less stress is also a huge determining factor, because just because you're not, eyes bulging out, angry, ready to throw some knives at your employees if you're, self-employed or whatever, to being able to just kind of talk things out. That's okay. Yes, obviously you've decreased your amount of stress, but have you decreased it enough for your body to actually think it's not stressed anymore? So, right. I mean, this is, you want to say it's relative, but it's not relative. This is actually, you have to decrease your stress enough for it to change what's happening in your body, not just what it seems like you've changed in your life. So
totally. And it probably doesn't go away, right? So like if
right.
It's like I don't know, I talk about the stress response and allostatic load, which we're talking about a little bit in the articles this month. But if you think of the allostatic load as just the total amount of stress that you're under from all sources, those are like rocks in a backpack, right? And meditation takes a couple rocks out. But every day when you wake up in the morning and you go to work and you throw a couple rocks in your backpack, the meditation tosses 1 or 2 back out. But you still have to do that again the next day. As long as you keep putting rocks in, you got to keep taking them out,
Right.
And
right.
so that's why they call it a practice, because this is just going to be probably what's up in your life.
Right. And if you've already had 20 years of rocks in your bag and you're only taking a couple out a day, like you have to think, that's a really good analogy. You have to think it takes time before you actually get to a place where you're not bearing the load anymore of that stress. So, that's just one other thing I always want to talk about, because people, they want to check the boxes and they want to say, well, okay, I did this. I'm not seeing any changes. But you have to remember, how long were you living the way you were living before, and how long have you made those changes?
Right. Yeah. It takes time for that stuff to sink in, so to speak.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Oh,
right. And so,
yeah.
And again, just another plug for HRV. This is, the heart rate variability tracking. I mean, this is where that really becomes helpful. Like, is the meditation working? Well, yeah, I can look at over the last month and see that my heart rate variability trend is trending in a positive direction. You're like,
right.
Yeah, it's working. I've just got to keep doing it. And that's just sort of the deal.
Yeah, and obviously this lifestyle, we're inclined to not weigh and measure and track, and there are so many wonderful things and so many reasons why we don't need to. But when you're starting to wonder why things aren't working, or if you're not getting the results that you want to see, this is a perfect time to start implementing some of these tracking methods.
Yeah, and just start digging in a little bit, right? So once you've kind of set yourself up for success by managing your stress and removing the other blockages to adaptation from your life, then, which can be all sorts of things, right? Like mental outlook and belief in, one thing or the other, like that, the kind of dogma can really get in your way, right? Like if you're super invested in the low carb paleo dogma, it's going to be difficult for you to see that what you really need are some starches in your life,
Right.
you know? So,
Right.
so manage the stress, manage the other belief structure blockages and things like that that are that could be potentially holding you back. And then take a look at the stimulus that you're doing, right? Is your exercise antithetical to your goals? You know, if you're trying to get big and strong, why are you running 50 miles a week? You know,
Right.
That's just probably not working for you. You know, well, yeah. If it's not working for you, then stop doing it. You know, is low carb paleo right for you now? Like it may have been before. It may have been exactly what you needed to, you know, curb your sugar cravings and get rid of inflammation and sort of put you on this path to being more intuitive about your eating. But maybe now it's time to switch it up. Maybe now you need to look at some sort of rotation or bringing back more starches, or maybe you need to eat more protein, you know, and all of this kind of stuff that kind of goes back and forth. Right. And
absolutely. And do your total macros and calories make sense for you, and for your goals? And, you know, especially calories here. You know, we've all gotten into this. You don't have to count calories. This is the great thing about this way of life. You can eat all you want. You don't get fat. And no, it's not calories in, calories out exactly. But at some point, you have to create a deficit if you want to lose more fat. And if you are stalled, and for me, I know this is the first way that I can lean out is I literally just have to eat less. And I like to eat, and I like to eat paleo, and it's great because it's yummy food. And, you know, it's really easy to, at the end of the day, stack up 2,000 or 2,500 calories for me. I'm 5'3". Like at the end of the day, I don't need to eat that much.
Still need to eat it.
Yeah, I mean, Adam and I eat the same amount sometimes. It's ridiculous.
It's true.
So, and because I have a good, healthy metabolism and good insulin sensitivity, I can get away with it. I'm not gaining weight, and I'm not, you know, getting fatter and that kind of thing. But I know if I want to actually lean out, I have to create that deficit somewhere. So, you know, at some point, I hate saying this, but at some point you almost have to look at cutting back the amount of food you eat.
Yeah. And, you know, we've talked about this before, and especially true for men, but we even see it with women, is sometimes, especially if you've been super low carb, you actually need to eat a little bit more to get your metabolism fired up, you know, and to get that kind of stuff going. And then, like in Vanessa's case, because Vanessa has remarkable insulin sensitivity. Like when I was, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I guess now, doing a whole bunch of tracking blood sugar and all this kind of stuff. And mine's just all over the place and super wacky. And I can't even like look at a sweet potato without my blood sugar doing weird stuff, not just spiking, but like dropping. And then 2 hours later, it's high. And Vanessa's is like perfect. Wakes up in the morning, blood sugar is 70, eats something, it goes to, you know, 105, and an hour later, it's back down to 70, no problems. You know, it's just, she's got that going on. And her metabolism just works, right? So eating a little bit less food, she can do that for a while without breaking her metabolism down.
Right,
you know?
right. And that is a really good point because, you know, I actually don't stay super low calorie too often because I want to keep my metabolism really healthy so that if I do want to lean out, all I have to do is drop off for a week or two and I can do that. But I do try to actually kind of eat a little bit more normally. So I'm not in a place where, you know, I only eat 1,200 calories every day and then I've got to drop to 800. And then it's like, that's an unsustainable model. So
and probably not that healthy. And it's a great excuse for ice cream. Yes. Like, I've got to keep my metabolism up.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, yeah. That's pretty funny.
No, so I know this is very confusing for everyone because we're saying, well, okay, at some point you got to create a deficit, but you don't want to create too much of a deficit because then your body, your metabolism starts to ramp down. And it's true. Yeah. That's why this is so tricky and why literally for me, I've come to a place where I don't try to be as lean as I want to be all the time because I want to be in the spectrum of, okay, if I need to lean out or I want to lean out, I can, but I'm not in this constant diet mode.
Yeah. And I think, totally. And I think that our like lean out moments are pretty extreme in comparison to most people. Like most, you know what I mean? Like sometimes we just need to get super lean, like not like figure competitor lean, but like music video lean, you know, which counts. Right. So, and I think that, the reason I brought up the metabolism thing is because I think a lot of women, especially, have been in this starvation, crash dieting cycle for a long time, like long enough time that their metabolism could possibly be broken, right?
Right.
And so that's where, creating this deficit, like Vanessa's talking about, is actually a pretty fine-tuned thing, and it doesn't take much. We're talking like a 400 to 500 calorie deficit per day, which is, I don't know, that's like a snack for me.
It's like my bag of kale chips that I'm obsessed with right now.
Yeah, so it's a small deficit, but it's a deficit nonetheless. And this is this minutia that we get into of calorie restriction. Oh, we don't have to do calorie restriction, or calorie restriction is bad for you, is not accounting for the entire conversation, right? Because how much calorie restriction? Are you eating 600 calories a day? Like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Eating 300 to 500 fewer than you eat on a normal day, that's probably sustainable, and healthy, So.
Right. And if you're in this paradigm where you are, you've been cutting back 500 calories a day for 2 weeks and you haven't budged a bit, then you know what? It may not be the time for you to really be tweaking with that. What that tells me is you still need to be in a healing your metabolism mode, because after 2 weeks of doing something, you should be seeing some results. You should be seeing something trending one way or another. And so if those are the kind of things, I've been strict, I've been doing everything perfectly for a month, I've been tracking and weighing and measuring and nothing's changed, well, then what you really need to focus on still is healing your metabolism, getting rid of that chronic stress response, fixing your sleep. Like, you don't have the right paradigm yet for you to actually be able to lean out when you just do the right tracking and have the right macronutrient strategy. So for those of you out that are like, I've been tracking, I've been doing everything perfectly and it's not working, well, then you're not in that mode yet. Things aren't fixed yet. So you've got to get back to, okay, how do we fix everything and get it really working in a healthy way?
Totally. Yeah. And it's, that's like we were just saying, we're removing the blockages and getting all that stuff squared. And then, okay, now I've been tracking and now I've been doing all of the things that are supposed to be perfect, yet it's still not working. And that's where one of the last boxes to check, is your total calories, right? You're like, oh, no,
yes,
that's
absolutely.
And so you're like, I've done all of the things and now it looks like I just need to eat a little bit less. And it could very well be, at least for part of the year, like in the summertime, that what you really need to be doing is eating less fat.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Not low fat. And this is one of the things that I think freaks people out in the paleo world when we start talking about bringing carbohydrate back. You're like, oh my God, we're going to eat carbohydrate. How much are we talking about? For me, on a big beefy day, 300 grams, which is still low carb compared to the standard American diet,
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I'm going to eat low fat. Oh my God, can't do low fat. It's still 120 grams of fat, which is not low fat. It's just low fat for the paleo community,
It's almost impossible to be low fat once you've gone paleo.
Yeah, it's like
it's just lower fat. Yeah.
Lower fat. Yeah. And that's
And really quick, one thing that I want to mention while we're talking about tracking too is Adam mentioned the HRV, but he also briefly mentioned that we were tracking our blood sugar. And the way that we did that was by actually getting a glucometer and checking our blood sugar just like a diabetic would. And, like he said, first thing in the morning, then 1 hour after you eat, 2 hours after you eat, and you can see how quickly your body deals with the sugar in your system and regulates itself. So that's another really important tracking device that you can use if you're not sure. If you're like, I don't know if I have good insulin sensitivity. Yeah. Well, this is a surefire way to figure that out. So if you want some more information on that, you can hit us up in the feed and we can maybe show you some places of where to look at numbers and ranges and that kind of thing. Yeah. But you can also just Google, blood sugar tracking and see what the ranges are. Get a glucometer and just start testing yourself and see, do I have good insulin sensitivity? I didn't know before I did that. I kind of thought I was all right, but then I realized, I really do have good insulin sensitivity. So those are good things to know.
Yeah, totally. And there's all kinds of fun stuff you find out when you're tracking that stuff, and actually, so there's Chris Kresser did a great series on this, because one of the problems with tracking blood sugar is that the ranges that are used by the American Diabetic Association are sort of skewed. it's a little weird. And there's just like all of this stuff, there's this crazy political backstory about, trying to sell, diabetic related medicines and insurance. Actually, it's a super interesting story if you like medical conspiracy theory, accidental conspiracy theory. Like, not like these people were, trying to create these problems, but they were trying to solve another problem. And then anyway, it's a pretty cool article series though. I think if you just Google Chris Kresser blood sugar, it'll pop up. And he has, there's a great whole protocol in there for kind of how to go about doing this, over the course of a week to sort of see where you're at,
Yep.
But,
Another place you can find it, if any of you happen to have the book out there, was it the Sweet Potato Power Plan, or what's the book? Sweet Potato
Power, I think.
Sweet Potato Power.
Yeah.
There's a whole section in there too of how to do it. So if any of you have that book sitting on the shelf, you can check it out.
Yeah, you know what? That book, I feel like that book didn't get as much play as it should have.
Yeah, I used it a lot, actually. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Tracking.
So back, tracking. Yes,
track that.
If you want to know, track more.
yeah. Just track a little bit more and see what is up.
Right. So then, once you've kind of tracked, you've started to remove any of the obstacles. Then you could start looking at, how is your exercise affecting the overall picture? Is that stimulus appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish?
Right. Yeah. Is it making you more hungry? Is it driving you to eat weird foods? Is it stressing you out to the point that you're, that it's counterproductive, right?
Yes, and there's a lot of folks out there that we know in the feed that have adrenal fatigue or borderline, and they're frustrated because they want to do the workouts and they want to they're excited and they want to get training and they're so happy to be part of this and want to utilize it to the fullest extent. But when you're in that paradigm, you just need to take it easy. And I know it seems frustrating, but if you think of your lifetime, if you give yourself this extra 6 months or even a year of letting that adrenal fatigue heal, you are going to get so much more out of this long term than trying to jump into something too soon. So,
absolutely.
It may be that you can only take walks for 6 months, and that's okay. Walks are awesome. Man, I wish that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
Can I go back to just taking walks? Dang it.
Damn this healthy adrenal system.
Why can I have adrenal fatigue? It's so much better. But I mean, honestly, honor where you're at and recognize that this is, a nice time to slow things down. And not only just on a physical level, but think about on a metaphysical level what that is telling you. When you have adrenal fatigue, it is literally, from a metaphysical standpoint, you just have to give yourself a break. You've just asked too much of yourself for too long. And I'm sure there's folks out there that are hearing this, whether you're moms or working moms or just really busy college students, whatever it is, you've taxed your system to the point for so long that it just can't deal. And so if you think of this as a pendulum, it swung one way and it's got to swing all the way back over in order to come into the center and to find that happy balance. So honor that, give yourself time, let your body heal.
Totally. Yeah, there's a great article. I think it's on the free, it was written in Performance Menu, I think, which is Greg Everett's Catalyst Athletics is their sort of publication, but I think it's a free one out there now. And it was written by a guy named Scotty Hagnes, who's the CrossFit Portland guy, and super dialed in. Like, the guy's been tracking everything that he's eaten and every workout that he's done for like the last 15 years. And he's just one of those guys that just has this stuff super dialed in. And he wrote an article called A Argument for High Carb Paleo. So Google that. Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, it talks about a lot of this stuff that we are discussing right now and how you can dig yourself a hole. And then he just goes into his experience with doing exactly that, digging a hole, and then what he had to do to come back out of it. And some kind of cool, simple stuff like tracking body temperature, tracking blood sugar and stuff like that as to a measure of knowing kind of what's going on and helping to fine tune your intuition about your your overall ability to buffer, hardcore workouts and food. It's a good one. Yeah.
Right. And obviously this is not a new thing that's happened to people. A lot of folks have dug themselves a hole and done the super low carb thing and trained too hard and created an adrenal fatigue situation. And this is a very common theme that you can see out there. So, and not that Adam and I had adrenal fatigue, but we were definitely on the early adopters of this whole thing where we thought low carb, the lowest carber is the winner. So
yeah. We probably could have developed adrenal fatigue had we been more motivated.
Yes.
We were like, that seems hard.
That seems really hard. I think I might just eat some French fries. Yeah, I know. It's good that we're not that strict.
Seriously.
But, this is really what's interesting about this whole thing is that the books that were written 10 years ago on paleo are maybe not as appropriate today as they were then because we're learning more about our systems. We're learning what's worked. We have a whole couple million people who've been doing this for a while now. So there's a plethora of stories and anecdotal evidence out there that says, okay, this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all paradigm anymore.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I mean, if it ever was, right? And
it's like, yes.
But it certainly seemed like it,
It did,
in the beginning, and everybody was, but you just saw it for sure. Like, well, I'm doing exactly this. I'm doing exactly that, and it's not working. Okay.
Right.
You must not be doing it exactly enough. And you're like,
right.
Okay, no, I promise. Like, I'll send you.
You need 20 times fat instead of 15 times fat.
Oh, God, yeah.
No, I swear, I don't need any more Mac nuts. I just need some potato.
I don't care how many Mac nuts you give me. Fran is not getting any faster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys have got something out of this today and you can start to sort of piece together what your personal plan should be for moving forward. And, it's obviously a plan that's going to keep changing and you're going to keep developing it as you go. And that's why we just want to keep talking about these issues as we progress so that you can go, okay, I relate to this piece of the story. And, when you talk about this, then I know I need to go this direction. And so everybody's going to be a little bit different, but just start to recognize some of the common themes that we keep talking about and see where your story lies and how you can start to create a system for yourself that's not only going to garner the results you want, but is also going to keep you really healthy.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's the most important thing.
It really is. I mean, it just absolutely is. And once you're healthy, like once you're super healthy and you're stoked on all that, then, mess around. You've got our complete and total permission to screw around with, low fat, high carb, low fat, intermittent fasting days, do whatever to try to keep your goals. But once you're healthy.
Yes, absolutely. And so, if you're not sure about things, then maybe track things for a couple of weeks. Make it interesting for yourself. Maybe check your HRV for a couple of weeks. Don't make it super stressful and another additional thing you have to worry about, but just set a timeline like, hey, I'm going to check this for 2 weeks. Check against, if I'm meditating every day, how things change, or if I'm giving myself more rest days, how that changes. And then I truly recommend checking your blood glucose levels and seeing if you can find out and shed some light on how insulin sensitive you are, because that's a really important thing to know.
Yeah, it's true. Especially, summertime, we're trying to get people to eat a little bit of fruit, and if you eat some strawberries and then check your blood sugar and it spiked up to 140, maybe strawberries aren't for you. And that's
right.
You may need something that's lower glycemic index.
Yeah, and that's a perfect point. If you're like, well, do you think it's okay if I have a little bit of fruit? Well, this is a great way to figure it out, because our gut instinct is to say, well, it's summertime, you could probably have a little more fruit, go for the peaches, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But maybe if your blood sugar, spikes to 200 after you eat a peach, then okay, that's not for you. But you wouldn't know, and we won't know looking at you, or it's a guess for us too, unless we have those markers. So do yourself a favor and just start getting more familiar with how to do these things, so that if things are going in a direction that you don't feel is in par with your goals, you can figure it out. You can maneuver things and add in different markers and figure out how to progress in the direction you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like I was sort of alluding to earlier, and maybe I'll just tell the story. Because the tracking, okay. the tracking for me, I found that my insulin sensitivity is completely tied to my sleep. So if I've been on shift and I don't sleep well, I'm insulin resistant, and like progressively so. So I work 3 days on, so 3 24-hour shifts. Over the course of those 3 days, my fasting blood glucose in the morning steadily climbs. And so it goes from, my first day on, it's, in the mid 80s or something like that. And by my third day on, it's in like the low 100s, which is like a 400% increased risk of cardiovascular disease. When you go from when your fasting blood sugar is between 100 and 110, it's dramatically different, right? This is why firemen die from heart attacks, right? And so that was something I noticed, right? The sleep deprivation and just the fatigue, chronic sort of fatigue and cumulative stress of the shift increased my insulin resistance and my fasting blood glucose in the morning, right? The other thing that I found was that the stress response to getting calls, like, so if I, get punched out for a fire, I had an opportunity one day where I just checked my blood sugar and tracked it. It was like, I don't know, it was mid 90s, something like that. Tones go off for a fire, go responding, get canceled. This took, 2 minutes, 3 minutes total, maybe to do this whole cycle and come back around. And I gave it maybe 15 minutes or so. And then I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just check my blood sugar and see what my response was to this perceived stress, right? Which was this alarm going off. I didn't even actually make it to a fire. There wasn't a fire. There was just the perception was that there was a fire because we got a call.
Right.
Check my blood sugar and it's 123, which is like higher than I'm able to get my blood sugar by eating sweet potatoes. So like I eat a big meal with potatoes and all of this kind of stuff, and I might get into the 115 to 120 range. And here's just from a stress response, boom, up to 123, right? And then it took 2 full hours for it to return back to normal.
Wow.
So when when we're talking about not wanting to eat carbohydrate to start this carb crash cycle, right? So we don't want to eat carbs in the morning because then I'm going to get a crash and then I'm going to want more carbs. I'm like, all right, well, look what my stress response did. Right. It did exactly that. It spiked my blood sugar, and then my insulin came up behind it and dropped it down. And I don't remember, but I'm sure a couple hours later, I was like craving potato chips,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So this is something that we know, right? That that's how the stress response works. But when you can track it for yourself in real life and go, oh my goodness, that I need to calm that down, because all of those adrenal corticoids and all of those adrenal hormones and all of the sugar and fat that gets mobilized to fight off that lion that never shows up is circulating until your body can deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Not Cecil the lion, because he's dead, but some other lion.
And the other one, right?
I don't know. That's what the reports are saying. I don't know. I read that he was dead, and then I read that maybe he's not dead. So,
who knows?
I don't know. I'm so sad about it.
The lions.
Anyhow, but that was a sidebar. I just had to interject that because I've been seriously in tears over this whole thing, and I don't care. I'm full hippie on it. I just am so sad about it.
Yeah. What was weird is the internet is just a strange place. So there's articles like showing up now, showing pictures of a lion, whether it's Cecil or not, like carrying around a dead goat. And they're like, see, this was Gary the goat, and everybody liked Gary the goat, and Cecil killed him, And you're like, what does this have to, like, how is this an argument against poaching? Like, I don't understand, The
Cecil's a poacher too.
Yeah, it's like dentists don't eat lions. You know what I mean? Like the lions eat goats. Like that. There's a difference there. I don't know. It's a trip.
Yeah. No, it's so crazy. I mean, yeah. I obviously I'm an animal lover and just do not endorse hunting for sport. Like, bottom line, I don't care. You can tell me all of the reasons why that, it can help stabilize the population, and there's all these things, and I understand that. And, then let's find ways to utilize the meat and, be conscientious about this life that we took, but going around the world and killing the largest animal to say that you can it's just like a terrible atrocity in my opinion. So that's me on the soapbox. Yeah. Sorry if anyone out there disagrees. We're all allowed to have our own opinions, and that is mine.
Damn. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And my opinion counts more than yours because
I have a microphone.
Because I've got a microphone and a podcast.
Feel free to leave comments. No, but really, it's just for me, like, I think that life is precious and we should treat it as such. So anyhow, that's...
Yeah, I think, well, you know, and it kind of speaks to some of the, like, the stuff we're talking about in the program right now with the mindful eating and this thought that everything that we do with relation to our bodies and the sort of experiment that we're in here, trying to figure out what's the best thing for it, if we pay some attention to it and are grateful for it, then it just looks like it works better, you know?
Right.
And I think that especially since we're eating animals, that's a big part of the deal. Is you should look at that and say, yeah, you know, this animal I'm eating because I think it's the healthiest way to be. And I'm grateful that this animal was here for me to eat, you know?
Yeah,
and even
absolutely.
just that is a wildly different thing than sport killing, you know? I mean, it just really is.
Yeah. And, you know, Adam and I are from small towns, and obviously we both grew up, Adam even more so than I, with a lot of people who have no issue with hunting for sport, you know, that is completely, they are proud of it. They love it. That's what they do. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of other people that use every piece of what they hunt and that kind of thing. But sport hunting is not a new concept in my world. It's not like I don't have personal experience with people who feel that this is a fun sport to participate in. And especially like this guy who has the bow and arrow, they think because they have a bow and arrow, somehow it legitimizes their effort even more because, well, I'm doing it with a bow and arrow. And I just don't understand it. It's one of those things I've had to actually be conscientious growing up with these kind of people around me, because it's really easy to fall into the mindset that like, that's not a big deal. Like, oh, well, guys just hunt. It's not a big deal. But like, let's think about this. Let's think about what we're doing. And, you know, this whole month is all about radical inclusion. It's about really kind of getting back to center on how we can be more loving, be more inclusive of each other. And obviously, some could argue that means I should be inclusive of them being hunters. but it means being inclusive of the whole, of the animals, of our planet, of everything. How can we work together to make this a more sustainable trip? And poaching doesn't fall into the radical inclusion paradigm. Yeah,
it's a tough one, man. I mean, it really is. And I think that, you know, conservation has a lot of different faces. And I think in the United States, I feel like the approach that we've taken with conservation has been pretty good. I mean, obviously you're going to find places where it's gone sideways and everybody has some opinions about it, but it works okay, you know, and we tried to keep this stuff all squared away. And that's what all of our fish and game laws, for the most part, are based around.
Right.
You know, and poaching just totally negates the plan. You know, I mean, even if it's not a great plan, it's still a plan, you know, and if you circumvent it, then now all of a sudden this may not work as well, you know? Yeah. I don't condone poaching.
No, poaching is bad. The end.
The end.
Well,
right.
Thanks for letting us rant a little bit about that. Sorry, I didn't intend to talk about that, but it came up and has been something on my mind a lot this week. And obviously, I'm not the only one. So, anyhow.
Go Lions.
Go Lions. Woohoo. We'll see you guys next week. Great first week. Great first job.
Yeah.
Love all you guys.
Yep,
Feeling
you guys
it this month.
Totally.
Yep.
Well, and I do want to just say the feed has been incredibly insightful recently. I don't know if you guys you haven't been checking in, go check it out, because people are sharing some incredibly good ideas on how to just be better people.
Yes, it's amazing.
I like it. Yeah, I learn things every day.
Yes, I do too. I know that's what this is, really a give and take. And I love that there is a circular energetic cycle that goes on between all of us, and a lot of sharing and a lot of good vibes. So thanks everybody for participating so much this month. We're feeling it.
Yeah. And we will talk to you guys soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.